Okay. You know, we talk about the three sufferings, and one of them is the suffering of change. So this cup is designed to avoid the suffering of change. It's an ember cup, and it's supposed to. Anyone hear of an ember cup before? What? No.
Oh.
So it keeps your hot beverage hot, the same temperature, whatever you set it to. It keeps it there, but it's still the suffering of change because it still only keeps it there for about an hour and a half. So it's so funny. And then anyway, yeah. So that's true happiness. There you go. Just get an ember cup. Okay. Okay.
So if I may, I do have a comment.
Sure.
Which is, for me, renunciation, if I use the word detachment, it makes it more meaningful. And it's quite connected to, I think you talked about Lama Yeshe, talking about how attached Westerners were. And so I find that a more neutral term. And that's what I'm assuming the state is a more neutral. It's not a sort of like rejection of something, but just sort of a letting go. So
right.
That's how I'm taking it.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would say is that the person who is generating renunciation in his or her mind has a deep sense that for once these things are not the path to happiness. That's, you know, there's really a strong conviction. It's very profound. It's a very profound state of mind. Detachment, of course, is a profound state of mind too. And certainly renunciation is about detachment, right? Because what we're renouncing is suffering. And then when we get more sensitive and more aware, when our meditation deepens and we watch the nature of the mind, then we see that the suffering arises in relationship to becoming attached, clinging to things, grasping. So so there's many levels to this kind of grasping. And when we get into the teachings on emptiness, then we get even to a newer kind, or the deepest kind of renunciation, or the deepest kind of detachment. So keep your eyes on that. Okay, Jay? I think, yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Lynn?
No worries.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Lynn?
I just have a question. So last week we talked a lot about renunciation in terms of letting go of all those things that we think are giving us pleasure and creating happiness, but really aren't, and are causing suffering. What does it pertain? How does it pertain to those, the things that repel us that also cause suffering? Right? Okay, so I'm just thinking about our assignment from last week.
Yeah.
Those of us who took the challenge to try to be, to be in a state of happiness.
Right.
And I was doing okay until Friday morning, when the Supreme Court decided to confirm their insanity.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, does it pertain to that whole aspect of suffering?
Gotcha. So let's motivate. I'll start with that, but since we're really starting, let's just set our mind in the right path of to think about motivation. You can think it is aligned with renunciation, because what we're renouncing is just a temporary fix or temporary happiness. Temporary happiness we would experience from this teaching, assuming we stay in a kind of a pretty good state of mind, then the result will be a good result, but it'll probably be something like getting an A on a test, or I don't know, having a good conversation. We don't know, but because we don't motivate properly, the result will be a very temporal result. It is positive, so not to mistake it for negative, but nonetheless, we can enhance this positive energy that we're generating now through this time together, and just motivate that. I really want to understand my mind. I really want to understand the nature of the world. I really want to understand these ideas because they're provocative, and it seems that they're saying something that might be true. And I want to do that so I can be of more service and and service and benefit to all those around me. So bigger, kind of dedicating and motivating it towards a bigger goal than just a temporal understanding, so you're not just getting understanding so that you can go teach it somewhere or show somebody or that you know what's going on or like that. Okay. And for those of you who have a teacher, then you or feel a sense of offering to your teacher or to the Buddhas or to the omniscient mind, to the deities, and you think you're offering this up to them to protect your mind so you use it properly. Okay. So yeah, so it's a good question. Of course, there's no bad questions, they say, right? It's very profound. Well, there's different ways to approach that. I'm going to try. I want to approach it from the point of view of our conversation last week, of course. So in one sense, they talk about renouncing the three poisonous minds, which are, attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So one way you could say is we renounce the path of the afflictions. That's the best way to explain it. Being convinced that following these afflictions are the answer. And this happens, it's easier said than done, because in fact, you might be working with someone living, whatever it is, who irritates you, and you feel that what they're doing is wrong, and it could be wrong what they're doing. Okay. But so you're going to fix the problem but it's coming from irritation. That's anger. So as practitioner, what we would try to do is reflect on that. Doesn't mean you don't do anything, okay? And sometimes you can't reflect. I mean, sometimes you just have to act. Of course, we're just regular people. But the goal of the practitioner is then to later reflect on it, that to react from a virtuous mind as opposed to the three poisonous minds. So renunciation is actually the renunciation of the afflictions or the afflicted minds or the delusional mind, the disturbing emotions. And so this is very easy to deconstruct. So Lynn, you mentioned about repelling. So it's the same thing as when we talk about renouncing pleasure. We're not really renouncing pleasure. We are renouncing attachment to the pleasure, clinging to the pleasure. When you feel repelled by something, it's a very, very profound practice, and it kind of pisses people off, because when we take the reversal of like Roe versus Wade, or what's happening in the January 6th hearings or whatever, this political climate, it's very ripe to have a reaction. So as dedicated to attaining a more liberated mind, it can't be just, being angry about Roe versus Wade or the Supreme Court. That can't be the answer, you see. So when you feel repelled, the simple answer is you're attached to something else, or we're attached to something else. And we're very attached to our opinions, for example, our points of view, our opinions. There are points of view, there are opinions, of course, that are wholesome, and more wholesome than ones that aren't. That's not our argument. Okay. Our argument is, how is your state of mind? That's where we're going. So that's the short answer, right? So if you have anger at the Supreme Court or whoever, that anger, you haven't renounced your attachment to your view. Okay. Now, what do people say? But wait, but it's wrong. And then again, we get stuck because we start defining right and wrong, and I'm going to be righteous against the wrong and do something about it. Well, if we just look at history, all the wars and all the conflicts are started by someone thinking their view is more righteous than the other. I'm generalizing, but it probably does fall into that kind of category. So that alone is not enough of a criteria. Okay, that alone is not enough of a criteria. So when we start transforming our minds, and commit to a spiritual path, then everything's in question. Everything. Even, all that stuff. Gun rights. All that. So it's not saying everything's okay, right? We're not saying that. There is, on a relative conventional level, the way I work with people ask, well, what do you do about right and wrong? And I'm still working that out, by the way. But what I would say right and wrong for me right now is that harms is wrong. That which helps is right. And then you go deeper. Because as you develop your sense of compassion and compassion, your wisdom, what helps and what harms starts to change, doesn't it? One way we could say, well, I'm just going to do what helps. So if my daughter, wants, she feels it's helpful for me to let her go to this party tonight, right? And otherwise she's going to get really sad and depressed, and she says she'll commit suicide, blah, 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 have to throw a tantrum, so you do the right thing and you don't put up a fight, right? But as we develop more wisdom, that as a parent, that fight might be the better thing to do, isn't it? I'm making this up, I'm trying to be quick about my examples. So renunciation, start from the foundation that is renunciation of the afflicted minds, the disturbing minds. Then we have to know what those are. We have to know how to understand them. Ultimately, renunciation is renouncing the wrong view of reality. That's really renunciation. So we cannot get hung up on the action. Okay. For us beginners, yes, we do say don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Those are guideposts, right? But it's not the actual renunciation. But we have to start somewhere. Okay. That's just my opinion, by the way. That's how I wrestle with it. Okay. Okay, so how did people do with maintaining contentment and happiness for the week? We had 3, I think we had, someone's hiding. I think wait, was it Margaret? She's got her camera off.
Hi, yeah, I'm just not feeling so well, so I'm,
But you're happy, but you're happy.
Well, I knew when I took the challenge that it probably would be under 24 hours before I realized I couldn't keep it up. And, in fact, that did happen. So,
Tell me this. Tell me what you learned.
I learned that the mental habits that I have are so fast that they happen before I can even think about it and gear my mind in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. Okay. My sister, she wouldn't appreciate it if I gave this example. She was here last week, but she's not here tonight.
You can do it then.
All right, she knows this drives me crazy. She has this thing where she kind of like rocks back and forth. It's a habit. And, that irritation, and you said is anger. Yeah, I guess it is. Sets in, and it kind of grows. It does grow. And it's just, I can click my fingers and that's how fast it happens.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that amazing? So, well, I'll comment in a minute. Was it Lynn? Was it you who also took on the challenge? What did you learn?
Yeah, I think this is something that I've been trying to work on, right? Just at least noticing when you start to spin out of control. Like, may not quite be able to stop it, but at least there is some fragment of noticing
Mhm.
And, not every time, but sometimes choosing to just stop and, not react, not just have that instantaneous.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's life's work, right?
So both, I think all of us can say the same thing, but when I came in early last week and talked about the problem was lack of control. So both you and Margaret have sort of exemplified that, right? You just can't stop. Or if you can stop, the best you can do is with aware, or you have to be aware, you have to develop a strategy, right? And even with the strategy, we don't do, it takes a long time, years and years. That's the thing, is years, we to practice. And most of us are not really so willing to do that. We're not willing because we've been recruited into this idea as modern people, unfortunately, is that everything can come fast, right? And the bad news here, and many people don't stick with these practices because they really work, but they take long. So there was once, I think it was Malcolm X, was talking about he had a very contentious parishioner in his coming to his church. And this woman was not a follower of Malcolm X. And every Sunday or whenever they were having his sermons, his talks, she would argue with him and challenge him. And she kind of drove people a little nuts. But whenever his aides asked him about this woman, why don't you just ask her to leave? And he said, it's the ones that are hardest to convert that are the most dedicated. So in Buddhism, we all stress from the beginning, don't, Buddha's famous saying, don't accept my teachings just because I said them. Okay, just out of respect for me. And this is unusual. When I heard that in my first meditation course, I was blown away because I'd been following another tradition that was based a lot on faith. So I thought that was so refreshing. So what we say is, it's good to have doubt, but have doubt that leans toward belief. You know what I mean? The other doubt is just skepticism. These people who are just skeptics, they never find they're not interested in an answer actually. But skepticism leaning towards it could be true is a very healthy state of mind. Then we don't get caught up in cults and guru worship and things like that. Okay. And this is happening more and more and more and more in our culture, isn't it? Even in the Buddhist traditions, we see. So it's buyer beware. We really have to educate people because there's a naivety that I think is, anyway, for me, it's very dangerous. It can ruin people's lives and has ruined people's lives. So discrimination is very important. Sometimes people say to me, they're embarrassed because they have this discriminating and they see some faults. And when everyone else is so, committed and seems to accept it. And I tell them that's good. It's really good. Keep your doubting mind, but it has to lean towards belief, right? Otherwise, you just never stop doubting. And it's just, it has to be it's a process. It's using one's intellect. Okay. Anyway, it's a long answer. I don't really know what I was saying. Okay. Let's see what we got going on today. This PowerPoint thing is, yeah, someone's saying something.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me, but during the week, I kept thinking, well, what is happiness? That was what I mostly was thinking about. What is it? Is it's elusive? Is it something deeper? My mother used to call it ha-ha happy. She wasn't an English speaker. She'd go, oh, it's just, now she didn't know it's ha-ha happy. Was it being ha-ha happy? Or was it when the birds were singing, I was happy? When the sun was shining, I was happy. When the raining, I was like, what? Where was I even going with happiness?
What is happiness? What is it?
Is it contentment? Is it joyful?
Anybody? What do you think? Anyone want to chime in? It's kind of important, isn't it? No one wants to chime in.
Happiness for me is, I would define it as being like where I feel fulfilled. And I'm happy when I feel like I'm coming from what I determine, I kind of label my higher self, my better qualities.
Uh-huh.
Then I feel happy, feeling altruistic, compassion. That gives me a sense of profound happiness.
Altruistic compassion. Yeah, those are linked with happiness, right? From the Buddhist point of view, that's exactly right. And we could analyze that. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can bring this up. Okay. I'm having a problem with the share screen thing. Don't know why. Ah, here we go. Okay. No, this is the wrong one, right? Sorry, guys. Do you see that? The lotus? It's not a lotus though, is it? Do you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Shantideva?
Yeah.
Yep.
So happiness, it is a big word. It's funny, isn't it? That we even have a discussion about it. Isn't that funny? I think it's funny that we even would have a discussion. It's like should be a given, but it's not, is it? So this is what takes analysis. And the flip side of happiness is what we talked about last week, suffering, which we don't really want to really talk about, do we? So, but we need to know what is the meaning of suffering or discontent in order to know what happiness is. It can juxtapose the two terms and the two ideas, right? Okay, now, does anyone remember where we finished last week? Sheila, do you remember?
I think we ended here.
Right there?
The next one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were close to this, weren't we? Okay, so let's okay, so let's spend we're gonna spend, if it's okay. So the topic for the series was renunciation, pure view, and emptiness. And I think that when we can segue from renunciation to emptiness, or the nature of reality, and that is pretty much synonymous with pure view or pure perception. So I'll try and weave all those three together, if that's okay. Excuse me. So I'm not convinced that we really understand this idea of lack of control. Okay. And we had a little taste of it with Lynn and Margaret, and everyone kind of has done this. But lack of control, we could say, also goes much deeper. Okay, it goes much deeper. We don't know things. So there are many. So we were talking a little bit about karma last week. Is that right? I think. Yeah, we were talking about karma. And because in this context, if we think about, there is a cycle of birth and death. And even if we not quite sure about rebirth, but even if we look in this life, the fact that Margaret, and Lynn, they were doing pretty good, and then something happened, right, to take them out of that. And that's true with all of us. So Margaret's was as simple as something her sister, just an action her sister does. Her sister didn't even beat her with a spoon or anything. She just kind of moved a certain way, right? So that is exemplifies this chain to this cycle, because then, I'm sorry, Margaret, I'm just using as an example. But then all of a sudden, Margaret circled back into it, right? It's a cycle. She doesn't want to, but there she was again. And it's the same for any of us. Like sometimes we have to, I don't know, perform something, and we always get nervous before performing. And we know we should, and know it's going to be okay. And there you find yourself obsessing about it, right? So that's this cycle that we can't stop that. And even if we think about, we do pretty well, but as soon as we're in an environment that is difficult, we don't have much control, do we? It's different for all of us, or in some ways the same. I mean, if we're all of a sudden, your electricity goes out. Jessica was saying hers went out yesterday, mine went out this morning. Just the electricity going out, which of course many cultures and places that have the electricity is out all the time. They don't have electricity, which is kind of interesting, So there we go. We cycle back. We might feel a little bit, what's the word? Uneasy or annoyed, because electricity, we don't have water, we don't have water, or it's a little too hot today, right? All of these things, or the pandemic, we got to stay inside, COVID spiking again, then what happens to the mind? Okay, so we accept that circling of the mind, the emotions, as natural. But this is what we're saying is that we actually have a choice. We can exercise a choice. What about something different? What about not cycling through those emotions? What about cycling through positive emotions? What about that? So the real happiness comes, there's a book called Happiness. I have it there somewhere. I think it's called Happiness. And I read a few chapters because I don't read whole books anymore at all, it seems. It's too much. And what I found, what he said, it's a Harvard, there's a class he taught at, I think Harvard, where was it Harvard?
Matthew Ricard.
No, not Matthew Ricard. It's
He has a book called Happiness.
He has a book called Happiness. Maybe this is called Happier. This book's called Happier.
Okay.
Happier. And it was a college program he decided to put on happiness. And there were, I think, a room for 200 students, and 1,200 signed up. And the next semester, another 1,200. And then, so it was like the most popular, I can't remember, it was Harvard, Yale. Anyway, what I remember reading in there is his conclusion was that there wasn't a fixed state of happiness. There was the best people could do was to become happier and happier. I thought that was interesting. Now, in a Buddhist context, what we're doing in terms of this path is we do say there is not just happier and happier, there is a happiness, contentment, fulfillment, but it's not called happiness or fulfillment, it's called liberation, enlightenment. That's very noteworthy, that's the word. They don't say, Buddha, they didn't call Buddha, so Buddha means awakened. I don't know Sanskrit. I speak Nepalese, which is a Sanskrit-based language, and the word for happy is Kushi. So they didn't call Buddha, instead of calling Buddha, they didn't call him Kushi, did they? In fact, I never even heard reference the Buddha being called Kushi. He has many different names, or the state of Buddhahood has many names, but I never heard the one Kushi. It's a nice name, isn't it? And even Buddha was born in Nepal, by the way, Lumbini. So the point is that we have to shift our awareness from this idea of happiness. And what is it? And why do they say liberation? Why do they talk about enlightenment as a goal, not happiness? Why is that? Anyone want to guess?
Well, I'll take a shot.
Yeah.
What I have learned is that reaching Buddhahood is about achieving infinite happiness and overcoming all fears.
Well, yeah, right. Because if we think the flip side, non-ultimate happiness, I guess we'd say conventional relative happiness and fears, we don't like that, right? If you know what I mean. That doesn't feel like, that feels like something to liberate ourselves from, isn't it? So conventional happiness is a little bit what we've been talking about in this so far, is having different ideas of conventional happiness, but even these conventional happinesses are not considered very profound. And the way to have conventional happiness is to achieve this ultimate happiness of awakening, enlightenment, liberation. Okay, they're totally bound together. Ultimate happiness, conventional happiness, they're inseparable. That's the good news. It's not like we go up there in the sky and we just hang out in ultimate happiness. It sounds like that, something like heaven or something. It's not like that. It's a state of mind. And that state of mind is actually, this is very important, is that that state of mind is our potential. Is our potential. We have that potential in us right now. And you cannot, unfortunately, by taking some drug or going to some weekend course or taking some supplements or praying to God, that this will just come upon you suddenly or with very little. It doesn't happen that way. And that's why this path or these ideas are not for everybody, because some people just, that's too scary. It's too tiring. It's too scary. But I think what people miss out is when you make a little effort on that, you get great benefit. So it's not like, honestly, I hope my teacher doesn't hear me say this, okay? So don't tell on me. It's really not just about enlightenment, okay? It's not just about enlightenment. It's about entering the path. That's all. Entering the path to enlightenment. When we enter the path to enlightenment, our level of happiness is outside the conventional worldly explanation of happiness. Okay. It's, now technically speaking, yeah. Now, excuse me. When the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, entered the path, okay, according to traditional literature, did I mention this last? I think I mentioned last week. It took him 3 countless great eons from the point where he entered the path to the point where he attained full enlightenment. And you think, whoa, I mean, I got to go through, even if I haven't even entered the path yet. And then I got 3 eons of this crap. No, it doesn't work like that. So once we enter the path, we start those 3 eons, we are at that point a different human being. We're no longer a regular human being. We haven't attained enlightenment, but it's like, let me think, I can think of an example. Maybe it's like having had cancer and they get rid of the cancer, but your immune system's weakened, you're weakened, and you're not, you're free of the cancer, and you got to build up your health and your strength and health, and you get better and better almost every day. It's like that. Now, we talk about 3 countless eons, it can be a bit discouraging. Remember how long an eon is? Anybody remember? Did I describe an eon? So it's not for the faint of heart. But this is also, I think, so I think part of the reason, whether it was 3 countless great eons or not, I think the reason that that's in the literature is because we want everything now. And if you think about practicing and wanting to attain enlightenment, then it can be an ego trip, can't it? It can actually strengthen your self-cherishing, which is what the enemy is. That's what we're trying to get rid of. Okay. So it can actually strengthen your self-cherishing, not weaken it. So when you think about 3 countless great eons, I've told this story before. I don't know who's heard it before, but I got to tell you the story. So many years ago, but 20, 25 years ago, I was in Los Angeles for some teachings by the Dalai Lama. And he was teaching on the altruistic mind of bodhicitta, the great compassion. He's teaching for 3 days on this unbelievable topic. And on the end of the 3rd day, he was taking some questions and answers, and giving some answers. So they're reading the questions to him. And one of the questions was, how do we attain enlightenment the quickest? And I thought that's good, because the bodhisattva, the one who has bodhicitta, wants to attain enlightenment quickly because he or she can't stand watching his and her, fellow beings suffer. It's just unbearable to her. Okay. to him? So I thought that's a good question, you know. So His Holiness twisted it around. He must have known what the person was thinking. I don't know. And he showed the aspect of being kind of upset. And he said, you Western people, you want everything quickly. You want everything right now. You want it at the snap of the fingers. You know, he said, they started talking about the story of Milarepa in Gampopa. And Milarepa, for those who don't know, is a great yogi saint who in Tibet attained enlightenment in one lifetime. So there you go. Remember that, not always 3 countless eons, maybe 1 lifetime too. That's just how they tease with our minds. So Milarepa had killed 36 people in that life, I think 36. And so you would think killing 36 people, you couldn't attain the heavy karma of that. Who could attain enlightenment? So Milarepa did, through incredible asceticism and incredible practice, meditating in these high caves in the Himalayas with only a cloth, a thin cloth around him, no food. He would just pick nettles and cook nettles, and sometimes he'd go without food for days and days. And so His Holiness is telling this story about Milarepa, and that it came, and that one of his heart disciples, Gampopa, Milarepa said to Gampopa, okay, you've been with me long enough now. I don't know, he was with him for some years. He says, now it's good for you to go out into the world and teach, you know, and spread these teachings to help others. And so Gampopa accepted what his teacher told him, and Milarepa said, okay, well, why don't we'll leave in a few days, and I'll escort you. I'll escort you out, you know, which was kind of a custom or a protocol, a very honored protocol for a teacher to do that to the student. Usually it's the students escorting the teacher. So they walk for a few hours. After a couple of days, Milarepa tells them it's time to leave, and they walk for a few. And now you got His Holiness Dalai Lama was crying when he's trying to tell this story, and he's breaking up and trying to tell the story. If he was right there, it was like he was watching it, or he was one of those individuals. So they're walking along Milarepa and Gampopa for a couple hours, and they come to a river, and then there's a bridge goes across the river and the hillside on the other side. And so Milarepa said, he said, okay, now it's time for you to go on your own. So Gampopa walked across the bridge, started going up the hill, and he had a panic attack. And he thought, oh, maybe I didn't get all the teachings. Maybe there's something that I still need to get. So he shouted, and Milarepa was walking away, and he shouted out to Milarepa, who of course is wearing this thin bare cloth over him. He shouted out to Milarepa saying, it's kind of panic, saying, did you give me all the teachings? Did I get everything? And Milarepa shouted, yes, you got everything. I gave you, there's nothing left for me to give to you. And then he turns around, and then all of a sudden he has another panic attack, and he shouts back, okay, well, of all the teachings, what is the most important one of all those hundreds of hours in text that he taught to him? And Milarepa turned around, and he lifted up the back of his skirt, and he showed his bottom, and on it were all these calluses from when his years of meditation. And he turned to him and he said, this is my pith instruction, practice. And he walked away. Okay. So 3 eons or one lifetime is dependent on intense practice, a committed practice. Now we all have a different karma, right? We don't know where we're at last lifetime. Maybe you were already in the caves, practicing diligently. So this lifetime, maybe, just quickly you contain realizations. We don't know. Definitely you had a connection, because here we are sitting together, listening to these ideas, and there's, 7 billion people who aren't listening to these ideas, right? More or less. There's not that many that are interested. So that's really amazing. That's as amazing as my Ember Cup, I think. So I don't know where I was going. Harvard, thank you. How did I get on that tangent? Does anybody know? No?
Happiness and enlightenment.
Oh, right. So we have to be committed. I think I really want to urge all of us to spend time over and over and over and over again, understanding what is meant by suffering, whatever word you want to use, okay? Unhappiness, suffering, our predicament. I really, really, really urge you over and over. Well, I don't have to urge you because you have to constantly be looking at, it is looking at the negative and how it's captured. And then you look at the positive because we have to be inspired. But if we feel that, like my example, the dog food, if we're inspired by dog food, there's something wrong. Okay. So, because that just doesn't even come close to our potential as human beings. The reason we don't have control is because of cause and effect, karma, these impure actions and speech and thoughts that leave traces on our mind. Okay, I want that to be very clear. These things don't go away. Okay, so this is what meant by these imprints. Okay, now there's pure imprints and there's impure or positive imprints and negative imprints. Okay, so it's very simple. We have to know very well, and so I spent some time knowing what the impure ones are. The impure ones, you can just narrow it down to ignorance, attachment, and anger. And then you can expand on that and things like doubt, pride, wrong views. Those are the 6 main impure thoughts or afflictions. Then we have 20 secondary ones, things like jealousy and spite and harmfulness and things like that. Then what about the pure ones? So now the thing is, trick is our level of practice is to reduce the amount of time we spend in the impure or the non-beneficial afflictions and spend more time in the pure ones. This is renunciation, okay, for our level. This is renunciation. And then this takes on more deeper and deeper aspects to it. So when you become more and more of a better meditator, right, then, before in the early stage of meditation, might have some fantasies, right? And as you can progress, you go, oh God, not those again, right? You become aware that those are disturbing, right? You might have fantasies of attainments, or you might have fantasies of going and living in a remote place, or might have fantasies of teaching, or might have fantasies of being able to sit for 4 hours without moving, right? Right? And then you get lost in those. We all do. And then as we become more subtle and more wise, we see that is suffering too. Are you familiar with? You following me here? Why are they suffering? Because coupling. One, they disturb the mind too, because when you don't have them, right? How do you feel? God, I just can't meditate today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Knew I should have gotten up early, but I went to bed last night. I tried to sit today and my mind was a mess. It's all, and then, by the way, what happens next? It's always going to be a mess. That's where we go next. I give up. I'm going to just, I'm going to go back into psychedelics and stuff, that, at least that worked, So, or drinking or getting stoned or, whatever, sex or money, right? Go back into pleasure, whatever makes me happy. Just read a book and forget about this stuff for a while, which maybe you do have to do sometimes. Okay. But so that's why meditation is the therapy, because it's not only, sorry, that's exaggeration, but through meditation, it's the strongest methodology for understanding one's mind. And when we say in Buddhism, there's an inner being and an outer being. So that we could say sometimes the definition of a Buddhist is that person is an inner being. And what that means is we begin to see everything from the inner perspective. That the fault is always the inner perspective. Even Roe versus Wade being overturned, even the July 6th hearings, even Ukraine, okay? As a very, 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 very deep understanding of reality, it's very hard to find what's not internal. It's just very, very, the line between internal, external becomes very blurred, very amorphous, very ethereal, very hard to find. We are so convinced. That's when we go into teachings on the reality part of things. Okay. So it all comes down. Oh, we saw this slide, right? No? It all comes down to shifting our focus. I can't read it because my thing's in the way. It all comes down to shifting our focus from merely the happiness of this life. Merely the happiness of this life. Okay? Does that make sense? Renunciation gives up the focus of merely the happiness of this life. If we want to understand renunciation, it's understanding this phrase. Okay? So this means striving for just striving. I should say just striving for pleasurable feelings of this life. We can use our meditation, our spiritual practice for striving for pleasurable feelings of this life. I've done it. I've been there. Okay. It's called getting high through spirituality. I gave up drugs and then I had to give up this attachment to the spiritual path for pleasure. Okay. I'm just talking about myself. I'm just, there was a time when I'll tell you a private story. Nothing's private, I know that. So when I was very young in the Dharma, I was in Nepal. That was like 1975, and I was there for a long time. And the very next year, after my first meditation course in 1975, I went into the mountains. It's kind of traditional for us to do one long retreat that's called Vajrasattva. Has anyone done Vajrasattva Retreat? You have? Okay. How'd you do, Maureen? Hard or easy?
Well, I would do every New Year's, the retreat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where at Vajrapani or?
Milarepa Center. Mostly.
Oh, Milarepa Center, right. Okay. So anybody else? You don't have to say, actually, it's kind of private. So don't say. Sorry, I put you on the spot. I'll put myself on the spot. So with the Vajrasattva Retreat, when you do it traditionally, it takes about 3 months to do. And you're spending anywhere 8 to 12 hours a day in sessions, 4 different sessions. And I was so attached to the pleasure of spiritual things that I decided I was going to go off and do it on my own in the Himalayas. And I had the blessings of my teacher, Lama Yeshe. And I went up. It was about a 5-6 day walk from the end of the road, when the road used to end outside Kathmandu. And I walked in there, and I had I knew there was a monastery there that Lama and Lama's Overshe suggest I go to that monastery, very, very high Lama, Tushuk Rinpoche. And so I was going to Tushuk Rinpoche's monastery, and I was going to say I'd like to do retreat here. A couple other Westerners had done it before, 1 or 2. And so I was going into there. And anyway, it's a really amazing story in one way, how things happen. But anyway, I went up there and I did this retreat. I was in a little rock. I did it next to there's a cave there, but I didn't do it in a cave. And I did it, there's a little rock house, just rocks, and I had a Sherpa. I had met this Sherpa who brought me food once a week. And so I was cooking on an open fire, and he'd bring me supplies and rice and potatoes and stuff. So I was not only cooking, but I was also trying to do these sessions. I was pretty new. I hadn't really done a retreat like that before. And I got up there, and I'd been like pretty good at meditating up to that point. My point of view, good, enjoying it. I got up there, and I could not concentrate for more than 30 seconds. And I had to spend 3 months there, 8, 10, 12 hours a day doing these sessions, no one around, nobody around, for miles and miles and miles. It was way out up there. And all I did was cry. I just cried over and over. I don't know why, I just couldn't meditate. I couldn't sit. You do this thing because it's quite strict that if you move, then you can't count those mantras. So I was like, you getting more rigid. And then of course I made a cushion out of pine needles and branches and stuff. And of course, after a week, what happens to all that? you got all these branches coming up through your skin, through your cushion. It's like, oh my God. And I had a very friendly mouse. So I had an altar just in front of me, and I had my water bowls there and the food offerings. And I had a very friendly mouse that loved to come and eat those while I was in session. It was running this way and that way, this way and that way. And it just was just story after story. I mean, it's just amazing. And I just couldn't, it was torture. It was really torture. And so I got back, 3 months, 4 months later, back to Kathmandu and went up to Kopan where I live. And there was Lama Yeshe, just happened to be there, right? As I walk up to near his room, he just happens, and he looks at me and says, so how'd it go? And I was still had this depression, right? It didn't just go away because I stopped. It's like this tight heart, and I wasn't healthy. And I said to him, oh, Lama, thank God I didn't die during the retreat. He said, why? I said, Lama, if I had died, I would have gone straight to the hell realms. He looked at me and goes, how do you know? He says, I think you would have gone straight to the God realms. Very important in that, because what he was saying was that retreat maybe helped me break my attachment to meditative happiness. When we talk about the 6 realms, right? Talking about the 6 realms, the hell realm, the spirit realm, the animal realm, the human realm, the asura, which are the lower God realms, and the God realms. In the God realms, you take rebirth there. It's not like it's not unusual. It's not hard to fathom. The God realm. So when we talk about renunciation, so in Buddhist renunciation, when we reach the second level practitioner gives up, he or she renounces also those realms. Okay, what that means is you are renouncing the bliss of meditation. That doesn't sound so good, does it? You kind of think, well, why am I doing this? So am I just doing, oh, I see. So the Buddhist path is not the bliss of meditation and happiness. It's all about suffering. So if I'm suffering really well, then I'm a good Buddhist. That's the goal? Who would want to be Buddhist? Right? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that when we are thinking and enjoying meditation, as we train our minds, the bliss that I'm sure all you have experienced, but the bliss that you experience, first of all, it's kind of infinite, but the bliss is, then you start talking about being interested in relationships and career and a house. It's not interesting. When those things were made to make you happy, those were the goal. They're not interesting. That's like the dog food. Once you've had filet mignon, who wants dog food? It's the exact same thing. So once we experience the joy, the incredible, it's not even, no comparison to any joy we feel. Well, maybe falling in love with a person, or, those kinds of things. Maybe, our child, looking at our child giving birth, the amazing miracle of childbirth, that kind of thing. But they don't last very long. But the meditative, the bliss, the happiness that comes from meditation it's quite a hook. So when we talk about renunciation, can you imagine now you have those experiences, but you don't get attached. Okay, you don't cling. That's what Lama was saying to me. He's saying, yeah, you maybe had some good meditations, but you clung to them. And in that 3-month retreat, I was so much missing those experiences that in juxtaposition, what I was experiencing, the anxiety, right? The discomfort, the panic was like a hell realm, because in comparison to the happiness of meditation. So why we renounce also the God realms is for that reason, because the God realms are not permanent. They're not eternal. So it doesn't matter if we experience them for, 10 trillion years, they end. And when they end, that's it. So in some traditions, the goal is to be reborn in these God realms, to attain these, I don't mean to be judgmental. It just looks like that, in certain traditions. I was involved in a tradition before I was Buddhist, and it seemed that that's what was going on for me and for that tradition, which is fine. I mean, it's better than nothing. I mean, it's better than, it's still a very exalted states of mind that you attain. But as Buddhists, we say, okay, our ultimate goal is not that, because we don't become liberated there. We fall again, just like I did up on those mountains. I fell, and it was terrible. Okay. I'm not saying I had big I don't mean to sound like, oh, I was a big meditator or something. No, I'm just saying my simple little, maybe I was just able to watch my breath for 30 seconds or something, and that felt good. I don't know, but that's why we have to be careful. So meditation is not the goal, by the way. In many traditions, mindfulness practice, all meditation is the goal. It's not for us. Meditation is the vehicle. It's the therapy. Do people need a break? Because we got about a half hour, and then I tend to talk too much. Sorry.
There's a question. Belardo has a question.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Okay. In a previous slide, you talk about renunciation as escaping from samsara, and now in the example you gave, also you mentioned something related to this, but escaping connotes to me fear, a fear-based type of motivation, and I know it's usually said that in our Buddhist path, we need to first work on renunciation, then bodhicitta, then wisdom of emptiness. That's basically the order. But I've also learned that in my own experience too, that one needs to have that positive motivation together with the, let's say, the escaping type, the fear-based. Do you agree?
Yes. It's an interesting point. There's a lot embedded in your question. Part of what's embedded in your question is something that's sort of natural amongst the Tibetans. They don't, I appreciate you bringing this up, because maybe I'm getting too hellfire and brimstone-y, but in the Tibetan tradition, they don't get so despondent, because I think from the very beginning they're also receiving teachings on the goal, Buddhahood, which is very positive, right? It's very, very positive. And we're not spending a lot of time on that because our topic is renunciation, and maybe it's easy to overlook that. That's one thing I would say. Now, the escape part, not all fear is bad, by the way, right?
No, I agree. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So the fear, so they actually in this path now, this consider what our talks today in renunciation is sort of like, we talk about three capacities of practitioners: lower, middle, and higher, right? We're talking at the lower, we're talking about lower and some middle level of practitioner. Okay. When we talk about bodhicitta, in not only emptiness, but the emptiness that we talk about in terms of the higher capacity, it's very positive, it's very positive, but we can't, I think I remember a quote I said last week, in that people want to just practice bodhicitta without practicing renunciation, which is impossible. And that's why I'm spending so much time on this, and maybe too much time, but there's fear. We are supposed to, in the early stages, have fear of the lower realms, for example. Fear, let me put it a different way. There is going to be a healthy fear of loss of control. So I don't think it should be panic. It's not meant to be like panic, but maybe concern. How about that? Concern. Maybe fear is too strong a word. But we should be concerned about our next rebirth, for example, right? That makes sense. Now, at a certain point in our practice, we won't be concerned about it anymore. Or we'll be fairly confident. But in the beginning, to get us to kind of practice, because we don't believe in future lives for the most part, we don't have that kind of concern. So we don't have anything lighting a fire for our practice other than I want to feel better, right? And that's not true spiritual practice. That's not true Dharma practice. You see what I mean?
Well, about the lower realms and the higher realms, to me, that's a big area of questioning. I know that it's in some of the early sutras of the Buddha. He talks about the lower realms. But if we're asked, to check everything and question, the answer I've gotten on this matter from certain geishas is that you don't have to go very far. I mean, right here on planet Earth, we have all these realms, and to me, that's sufficient fear that I can handle. The thought of being reborn and the way the planet is going, and and the birth rate is going down. So a lot of us minds are necessarily might become insects or something.
Yeah. So I don't see any contradiction, right? You and I are not in contradiction, are we? I'm not saying we were, but I agree with you. It's the same. I don't see any difference. Did I miss something?
No. It just makes it more tangible that way.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. There's a great book by Chogyam Trungpa called The Myth of Freedom, one of his earlier books. Yeah, that I think it was in that one, or Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. It was one of the two. I think The Myth of Freedom, where he draws that connection mostly with what the world is like, the present day. Schizophrenia. For me, a lot of times, paranoid schizophrenics are very much indicative of a hell realm, for example. They see things around them, they see fires around them, they see people chasing them. Sounds a lot like the hell realms when you read those traditional descriptions. When I think about a heroin addict, I think very, very much similar to the spirit hungry ghost realm. We can go into. I totally think those are very helpful. When I think about people in what's it called? Assisted living or something, people getting older in their lives, maybe some dementia, have dementia, like my mom had very severe dementia, then it feels like kind of like an animal realm, mentality. So the realms are only taking on a body that matches your mental state, right? That's all. So saying, and then the God realms, we can do the same thing with the God realms. When we look at people, I would say the anti-gods or the asuras are more like the celebrities, the super wealthy, those kind. And I would say the gods are made more like type of people who are sort of happily blissed out, maybe through meditation, maybe through some drugs or something like that. But, generally speaking, kind of well, in a well state of mind, right? So that's how I think of it, so I don't disagree with you. But the question then comes, I think the provocation is this. The provocation is take any one of those people, okay? Let's take the paranoid schizophrenic, because it's extreme. It's easy to see. It's standing on, maybe standing corner or whatever. What happens to that guy, let's say guy, what happens to him when he dies? So he dies with that mindset, right? That state of mind. I mean, things happen, they absorb and all that kind of stuff occurs. But if we believe in karma, cause and effect, then at the moment he dies, he is generating a cause that needs an effect, that will generate an effect. So does that mean he'll be reborn as a paranoid schizophrenic as a human? Maybe. Maybe it means he's born as something that will match paranoid schizophrenic minds, body that matches it more. You see what I mean? It's
Yeah.
worth thinking about. It's just, I don't know. What do I know? But just we have to push ourselves to meditate like that, right? Just using our logic. And to use our logic, we need a formula, right? We need a formula, and that's what we've been covering kind of through here. What we've been doing. I think I'm trying to look at a formula. Let's see. I keep losing the slides. And here we go. I'm not getting very far. I think I'm talking too much. I should make my coffee less strong next time. Anyone else want to say something in place of me?
I just want to add one thought I had about what we're talking about. Again, talking about the hell realms on planet Earth, it seems to me that the global warming and the suffering of the heat that many people are experiencing in our collective karma, and we see that like the oil people, the petroleum people are still causing this, based on this tremendous selfishness. And these are like some kind of gods. They think they're gods, and so we don't have to go too far to what's actually happening to understand, to apply these categories, do we?
Right. No. So to take it a little further, so we look at the oil barons or whatever they are, and I have the same reaction you have, and it's easy to have that reaction. But now that you think about, if you go deeper into it, and what we're talking about with emptiness is about things being dependent, arising, interdependent. I did jump. I realized I jumped there. But with understanding the emptiness of inherent existence, the emptiness of anything existing independently, then those oil guys and women don't exist independent of us. So we're experiencing the results, aren't we? Aren't we? So can we experience a result for which we didn't create the cause? Well, I'm going to run through a few. So we'll come back to this in a minute. I'm just going to run through a few things. We only need to practice the wish for enlightenment, bodhicitta. That's not correct. Okay. As we were talking about a minute ago, Avandra was talking about renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Some people say, well, I really like bodhicitta. I think that's all you need is the wish. You don't. We need to have renunciation, or else it's just emotional bodhicitta. It's not real bodhicitta. Okay. We need renunciation even to reach the lowest nirvana, lower nirvana. To develop the wish to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all living beings, you must first develop a kind of compassion where you can no longer bear to see these beings tormented by the sufferings of life. To develop this, you must develop renunciation over your own situation. There is no other way, otherwise you could gain compassion, for it contemplates the situation others must face. So what Aslan's I think is saying here is look at our situation, our personal situation, and then develop a sense of renunciation around that. Then we can develop compassion for ourselves and for others. So without understanding our own predicament, that was what alluding to when I said about our own rebirth, for example. We don't know. But to develop this, you must develop renunciation over your own situation. Okay? There's no other way. Otherwise, you could gain compassion. For it contemplates the situation others must face. Only in Tibet, Lama teaches that, only in Tibet have they found people with the wish for enlightenment who haven't yet found love and compassion. So it's just emotional bodhicitta at that point. It's not based in experience and logic, actually. Okay, how to develop renunciation. Is this stopping the desire for this life? I know that sounds so religious. Let me go on a little bit. Stopping desire for this life doesn't mean not being happy in this life. this life is hard to find. And again, I know this is beyond the scope of this class, but we should reflect on how easy it is to get a human rebirth. Okay, so if only, oops, life. Oh, well, anyway, if only get more of the good stuff and less of the bad, our great fortune of this life and the difficulty in finding it. Okay, we need to reflect on our great fortune of this life and the difficulty in finding it. Now, those are totally uncommon concepts within our modern civilization today, because we don't know about rebirth. We're not sure. But if we become more and more entertaining the thought of rebirth, then you add your logic to it. And you start thinking about, is it easy to get a human rebirth? It's not easy to get a human rebirth. You know, this is where we meant, but this class is not designed just for that. Okay. So, and the other thing is remembering our death, impermanence and death. Could die anytime. So then when we have an awareness of death, it changes things a lot, because then it's thought, well, I don't want to waste, I don't want to waste it arguing with this person. I don't want to waste it, working 14 hours a day so I can, buy a new car or whatever. You know what I mean? So that has an impact on renunciation. So if we think about renunciation, we do entertain leisure and fortune are hard to find, and that things end quickly. Okay, this life ends quickly and without any warning, usually without warning, or if we're warned, it's very quick, it's very short warning. Okay. These are just repeats, sorry. Okay. So again, the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, we just don't believe it. We just don't believe it. Renunciation happens when we firmly decide to be happy. It happens when there's an understanding and commitment to a spiritual life. It's not a dirty word. Okay. It's a blocking of suffering. Okay. Okay. So that's that. I did it. I did that part. Now we have about 15 minutes. Would you like to talk about the next section of wisdom of emptiness? People are saying, yeah. Okay. Did that get too long? Maybe that was all too long, huh? I was trying to talk really fast. Okay. Okay. No questions? Okay, well, if you have a question, let's save it for a minute and we'll talk for a few more minutes on this other thing. I think this is it. See, this is what's weird about this. Sorry. I switched to a Mac a few months ago and I don't really know how to use it. Someone else should run the slides, huh? Okay. You see that, right? Can you see the screen, wisdom?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in traditional Buddhist explanations, we talk about the 3 higher trainings. So higher because they are aimed at liberation. This is also very important, because the higher we have the training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. But there are many traditions have training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. How we distinguish this is, for example, in concentration, we have, for example, in the Hindu tradition, they have very rigorous training in concentration. But when we talk about higher training, means we are directing our concentration, the motivation, because as we motivated at the beginning of the class, the motivation when you develop your concentration is liberation. And you might say that in the Hindu tradition, they might say the same thing. They do probably say the same thing, but then we have to analyze what is attained through those practices, whether it's really liberation or not. And that gets into philosophy, which is very, very interesting and exciting, but we're not going to do it in this class. But we'll talk a little bit maybe next week about different tenets and how this dovetails into higher training and wisdom. Okay, so a higher training in wisdom is directed, the wisdom that we're talking about has to be a wisdom that is focused on liberation and or enlightenment. Okay, liberation and enlightenment are not synonymous. They're not the same terms technically. Okay, but we can use liberation loosely to include enlightenment. So with a higher training in wisdom, I have the bird here because many people know the saying in Buddhist tradition that wisdom, compassion without wisdom and wisdom without compassion is like a bird trying to fly with one wing. So we have religious traditions in our world that do develop a quality of compassion, but we would say they don't have the higher understanding of wisdom. So the compassion becomes limited. That's what's fascinating. So we want unlimited compassion. So the goal is, again, kindness. If we want to develop a sincere and kind heart, I think most of us do. I think most of us resonate with that really quite a bit, don't we? Actually, the beauty of this is that they develop the highest, softest, warmest, most affectionate heart is developed through the use of wisdom. And I don't think we find this in any other tradition. So science, we could say, one way is a path of developing wisdom, but I mean, I'm talking about in just sort of a colloquial sense, but we can't see how the wisdom generated, or the knowledge, we could say, it's probably more knowledge than wisdom, could be wisdom, is mostly is independent of any thought about developing compassion or warmth or affection for our fellow human living beings. Okay, so this wisdom is what's referred to as a right view, as opposed to incorrect view. The incorrect view is so this is very important if people haven't had these teachings yet. The opposite of wisdom in this tradition, this philosophy, is ignorance. Okay? The opposite of wisdom is ignorance. Okay. So Lama Yeshe used to say, he said, don't worry about emptiness, forget about it. Just focus. Just focus on how your mind creates your reality. Guess what that is, by the way? That's emptiness. So let's get something clear. Emptiness is not a thing, okay? It's not actually a thing like this. Of course, it's a thing in the sense that you can know it. But to say emptiness, Lama Zopa Rinpoche corrected us years ago. He said, you really shouldn't say emptiness. You should say it's empty of something, okay? When we just say the word emptiness, it sounds like a voidness or nothingness or space. And I really want to stress, I'm glad we're here together, because I want to stress, don't trust what's out there. Don't trust what I'm saying either. There's a lot more and more wrong information about emptiness. And I guess it's just a sign of the times. People, I got a letter the other day from an old friend saying that basically saying he realized emptiness, and he described it. And I don't know what to do. If anyone has any advice, help me out, because I didn't answer it. Because for my judging mind, I'm not clairvoyant, so I can't go into his mind. But it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like one of these wrong ideas of emptiness again, which is kind of like space. So it is not space. It is not voidness. It is not nothingness. Okay. It's the experience of something, and you experience the emptiness of a projection onto that thing. So it's seeing something a certain way that's opposite to how we usually see it. Okay. So when we see it the opposite, we say, oh, well, how do we see it? Now, this is why ignorance is the key, because we have to know how we see things incorrectly in order to see things correctly. And all these people I don't know, they're meditating on Mahamudra and Dzogchen and, these amazing things, but I'm not sure what's going on, because it's almost like and I can't judge. So don't get me wrong. I'm just saying this to make a point that you should beware, because it sounds like they're meditating on a thing. Okay. Rather than meditating on the absence of a thing. What's the absence of? It's the absence of ignorance. Okay. I'm sure this doesn't make sense. I'm probably not being very clear. I will make it clear, though. Of course, I have to. Now, by the way, the topic of emptiness is quite delicate, because we're taught, it is traditionally said, you cannot teach it to an audience that's not competent to understand it. Okay. So from my side, I mean, it can be very, it can be a pretty bad thing if I don't explain it clearly and leave you with more confusion, and that can be kind of quite negative, actually. So I'm having confidence that we won't do that. Okay. So I really want you to, we won't have prime time this week, but if you have questions, need clarification, I'll try my best to ask those things, because the last thing I want is someone to leave this class with this completely wrong idea. I don't think that'll happen, but I don't know for sure. So you can hold me to it. Okay. So we need to understand ignorance. Don't worry about emptiness right now. Okay. So ignorance is what each instant of our life, even when we're asleep, even right now, even when we're meditating for the most part, unless we're realizing emptiness, all of that is going to be experiencing the world how it doesn't exist. Each instant, I mean, right now, you and I are experiencing each other in a way that is not realistic. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. This is why it gets tricky. I'm saying the way we see it doesn't exist. The manner. We're seeing it in an unrealistic manner. So ignorance compels us to see things just as as unchanging when they are not. Now, so there are 4 schools of tenets in Buddhism, and they say emptiness is this, no, emptiness is this, no, emptiness is this, no, emptiness. And those 4 schools are all right, but not ultimately. So the lowest school is right. Buddha taught that, and it's right for a particular level of capacity for the practitioner. We have all levels of practitioners, don't we? So that's why Buddha taught different levels of the understanding of reality. But in fact, the levels he taught were not the final explanation, not the final way that things exist. So we're going to start at this lower place. Okay. So when we say it compels us to see things as unchanging when they are not, that's should be pretty easy for us to intellectually grasp. Everything is in the nature of change, relatively speaking. You know, all the form in our minds are in the nature of change, but we don't see them changing. Okay? Do we? We don't see things. Do you see everything changing in front of you? The atoms are flying around, the molecules, just the form. I'm talking about just form right now, not the mind even. Just the form. They're all moving around a million zillion miles an hour, aren't they? There's nothing that's static, is there? According to science, there's not even. Now, Buddhist science is the same thing. It doesn't mean there's nothing that's unchanging. There are some things that are not changing. And we'll talk about, we can just touch on those next week. But for the most part, everything we experience with our five senses and our sixth sense of the mental sense, like which perceives thoughts and dreams and ruminations, and our eyes perceive forms, our nose perceives smells and scents and odors, our ears perceive sounds, our taste buds perceive, the different tastes, and our skin or our tactile experience different sensations of the skin and feelings. Did I get them all? That's five, right? And then our brain, I shouldn't say our brain, but our minds are perceiving, dreams and images and thoughts and memories. All of those are moving. All of those are impermanent, changing. Yet we see each one of those as fixed, permanent, unchanging. Okay, that's just one. Now that level of ignorance for the highest school, that is just considered really gross ignorance. For the lowest school, that's the most subtle ignorance. That you get rid of that one for the lower schools and you attain liberation. Higher school says, no, sorry. It's really great, you get rid of that one, but that's just pretty much a fundamental basic ignorance, not even the real, that's not the one that'll get you liberated. And so that's my teaser. I got something in here. Yeah. So that's my teaser. Okay. Leave you hanging. So yeah, that's just the introduction. If you have anything, it is 5:30. Sorry. It is 8:30 in some places, 5:30 in other places, 4:30 somewhere else, 9:30 somewhere else, tomorrow morning somewhere else. Okay, any questions? Is anyone super confused? Well, that's good. If you are, you're just not saying. Okay, I won't push you. Yeah.
Do you have any challenges for this week? Any homework
Yeah, I
challenges?
thought about that, and I thought about what I would like, if and you can remind me because I don't, is that what I would like, what I think would be helpful is this idea of permanence. Just walk around, when you're walking around or driving, just see that you see things permanently. Don't try and see them as impermanent, because that's how they exist, but that's not what that won't help. We have to first see, we first have to see how we see things. In the meditation on emptiness, one of the strategies is you first have to identify what you're going to refute. It means you first have to see how we're seeing things wrongly. So I really want you, please get a sense with your, with your eyes seeing forms. See how you see them as fixed, permanent, unchanging entities. When you hear sounds, listening to music or the news or whatever, television, don't say, oh, I know it's changing. Of course we know that intellectually. I'm asking, what's your default mode of perception? Can you see? Can you hear? Can you taste? Can you smell? Can you feel that all those things are experienced as permanent phenomena, permanent experiences? And come back next to you and go, okay, I think I got what you mean. Okay. So on that note, thank you very, very much. Thank you for hanging in here. Maybe I'll have weaker coffee next time, so I don't talk so much. Put more decaf in it. Maybe if I don't have any coffee, then you guys have to do all the talking. Is that okay? Okay. Please dedicate well that from this time we shared together, and that really realize, we have to realize this life, it's unbelievable, just this moment. You think of the miracle of this moment. Miracle of this moment, we're here together. We're here together as friends and connected. Just think of where we could be otherwise. Not only as humans, but this unbelievably precious, perfect humans. We're all at peace. We have food. We're listening to a profound topic that, you know, is going to lead us to freedom. You know, if we listen to the July 6th hearings, it's not going to lead us to freedom. If we listen to the news on Roe versus Wade, not going to lead us to freedom. You know, engage with our friends and family may not lead to freedom. So I'm dedicating this energy, this fantastic energy, to continue to be able to generate and develop my mind like I am doing now. And I just really rejoice that I'm doing it. And I offer this to everybody, because everyone, so many beings aren't experiencing. They don't know what we're talking about. Okay. So dedicate that way. And then I dedicated my full awakening mind. I'm going to attain full awakened mind in order to benefit all living beings. Okay.